All right, so we're going to start at 5 o'clock now. Finance Committee, March 4th, 2021. And we have a full committee, a full subcommittee attending with Councilor Farino, Councilor Horn, and myself. We have 2 items on the agenda this evening. We have discussion on a trash fee and discussion on a licensing fee thought to potentially reverse or have limited fees because of COVID for some commercial businesses. I will say that this meeting is scheduled for 1 hour and there is another meeting scheduled right after. However, if we have an influx of comments, I want to be able to try to take all of them if possible. So, I am willing to stick around to listen to what people say. I would like to go out of order and just get the licensing fees kind of out of here. I would either want to continue this or just go to the council without a recommendation. Personally, I don't feel we're in a position, even though it's a extremely nice gesture to try to give back to the businesses that have lost a lot over this past year. I'm not sure if we're in the position to do that financially. It's kind of hard to talk about, on the other agenda item, talk about a trash fee on one item and then talk about trying to, take away fees on another item. So I would either look for a motion to continue if you would like to talk about this at a later meeting, or look for a motion to go back to the full council without a recommendation on this and let the full council discuss.
I got a question, and maybe since Austin is attending the meeting, I can put it through you, Council Chairman. And, I know that the town manager sets the fees. We initiate them, but they set the fees. What is your feed on this, Austin? What is your opinion? I agree with Jim. We're in dire straits, kind of. All our receipts are way off this year, and as much as we'd love to help out the business community, that it's we're hard pressed to even consider that. But what's your read on it, Austin?
So my role isn't to set the fees. My role is to implement the fees.
Right.
So the fees.
The council sets the fees.
By the council. It's a very difficult year. I'm sympathetic to everyone that's been uniquely impacted by this. Hold on a second. This light is way too bright in my eyes. We're not in a position where we can allocate money back right now. As altruistic as it is, and as much as I would like to, I think that potentially with the next federal level bill, there will be the opportunity to either through the state government or if money comes down to the local government, we'd be able to allocate some funds to these same type of businesses. But that at this point in time in fiscal 21, it's very difficult to do that. Anna and I were even talking about earlier today, Anna Friedman, the assistant town manager, CFO, we were both speaking about potentially in fiscal 22, depending on how the federal funding comes down, if we could determine if there was like 1 year programs that we could do once we have a better idea of what we're getting in federal and state aid. But until that point comes, it's very difficult to think about giving money back in fees.
So is that something that we could, if we do get money down the road, or if there's some money available through the feds, could we retro money back to them for the prior year, or is that something that isn't?
I don't think we really want to get into all those conversations about what we can and can't do. I think, what's in front of us is just to see what, if we choose to do anything for this year. I think what this amount of money is looking at is somewhere approximately around $10,000 potentially. And I think that that's just, as altruistic and great an idea as it is, I just think we're not in a position to do that right now. So, and again,
just hoping that there may be some wishful thinking and light at the end of the tunnel, that maybe they could get some relief.
Right. And I think when we have an idea, we would absolutely, I think that's a great idea. And when we have more information on that, we could go forward with it. But Anna, do you want to speak?
No, apologies, I joined late. I was actually on a federal funding webinar talking about the different funding streams that are available right now and what might be coming. So I don't know if Austin mentioned this, but I'm excited to see a lot of attendees on the finance committee meeting. There's usually not very many folks. So while we have these folks on, want to make sure, in case Austin didn't mention this, right now we're projecting to not meet the town's revenues this year for the budget. I'm not sure if Austin said that, but we're looking to be somewhere around potentially $70,000 below where we needed to be to close our budget. So we're already making additional cuts and restraining spending on our end, because under law, we're required to have a balanced budget at the end of the year. And so unfortunately, it's, to dig that hole, we're already in a hole and we'd have to dig that hole deeper, unfortunately, in this situation, as frustrating as that is.
So anyway, would somebody like to make a motion to go back to the council without recommendation on this and let the council just vet it out and ultimately make a decision so we could just put this behind us?
Shouldn't we recommend or let them know exactly why,
Well, it's going to be discussion that's going to be there. I want to really spend most of the time tonight on what people are here to discuss, and I don't want to, rehash.
I think we move the question and make a vote. That'd be
So you want a recommendation? What is your motion, to not recommend or to just go back without recommendation?
No, to not act on this at this time.
Okay, so you make a motion to not offer any money back, and Councilor Honan seconds that.
Yep, second.
All right, any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll put it to a vote. Councilor Farino?
Yes.
Councilor Honan?
Yes.
And I am also a yes, so that will go back with a negative recommendation, a unanimous recommendation to not offer that. Now we will go to the trash fee, which I'm sure most of the people on the call are here to listen to. So what I want to do, and we say trash fee is the agenda item. I think it's more inclusive than that. It's about trash and it's about the whole process. But let's just give, and there's a lot of questions going on out in the community. So I want to try to just give an explanation as to where we are and how we got here first. And we are going to open it up to public comment to get the input from the community. And we are going to discuss this, and we are going to ultimately decide if we need more meetings on this, if we're going to go back to the council with some sort of recommendation or not. But over the past 7 years, we've been very fortunate to have a contract which started out, I think, as a 3-year contract with a couple-year extension, and then 2 additional years extension after that. So we've had the past 7 years, we've had a relatively friendly contract with Capital Waste to pick up our trash and our recycling. The contract was very straightforward, very easy to read. It was a certain amount of money. It had a small escalator every year. And that's the way we went for the past 7 years. And our last budget in, I think, fiscal 20 was roughly 1.2 million and change. And we put a small escalator in last year, and I think we had budgeted for fiscal 21, which we are currently in, 1.264 million-ish. Now that was done last April. We discussed it. We had several iterations on the budget because of COVID. It was kept at that number, and we passed the budget with that $1.26 million number. I did not hear a whole heck of a lot about trash for the rest of calendar 20, and started hearing that we were underfunded in that line item. So we obviously through correspondence and through finance meetings, we realized, I know I asked the CFO in a meeting in January if she could kind of speak to the amount, because we had heard we were under, and she informed me that it would probably be best to come from the town manager. And then we were informed that we were informed that there was a contract that we entered into, that the town manager entered into in July 1st of 2020. I still don't.
I'm not on video.
I still don't have the actual contract, but I have it's labeled a proposal, but it's acted on as a contract. And the contract basically says that it's a 3-year contract with a 2-year option. And bottom line is the fee for 2021, which we are currently in now, is roughly $1.68 million. So now the realization is that we are roughly $420,000 underfunded in fiscal 21. So now, and in all honesty, trash is definitely something that I have had on my radar, not just for discussion. And when the town manager started here, I think it was one of the first conversations we had, that trash is one of the most, if not the most highest single line item other than health insurance in our budget. And it is definitely something that needs to be looked at. Is there any better way to do it than what we do?
Excuse me, and I interject on the timeline that you presented.
Okay.
So one thing, I think you're off by a few months there. I have right here an email from Denise Quist from September 7th in reference to the trash fee. Jim stated last week in committee reports that he hopes this trash fee discussion gets sent to the Zero Waste Committee, and he would like a joint meeting with them to discuss, should I set this up? I also have another email from July asking Denise to coordinate with you concerning discussion in the Finance Committee concerning the trash contract. So I think that.
So are you saying that I was aware of a contract that you signed in July?
We were talking about a trash fee over.
We were talking about a trash fee for 3 years, about the discussion of a potential trash fee. We never talked about a trash fee because we were remedying a $420,000 deficit that was entered into. Excuse me, Anna, just wait 1 minute, please. So yeah. I have had questions on trash and trash fees for several years as to a discussion of it. I've never had a discussion other than the last 6 weeks on a trash fee to cure a $400,000 deficit. And I actually never even knew what the deficit was and asked Anna in January, and Anna said at a finance committee meeting that we would, I don't feel comfortable discussing it. I think you should go through the town manager.
Can I please explain that since
sure,
you're
Anna.
referencing me? Thank you, Counselor. I'm just a little bit taken aback by how this was just explained. I'm honestly shocked. So I have very explicit recollections of multiple conversations in Finance Committee with all of you in the fall, where I believe the town manager had passed along through multiple emails. I know I've passed along in multiple emails the proposal information that had been shared with me via the town manager about the projections for the trash contract. The reason I did not answer the question in January was because we were trying to understand. I did not have, because I was not at the table with the vendor that others were, on what the parameters were around the barrels. And so I didn't want to throw a number out there and have folks get stuck on one number if it was actually a different number, because we also have to take into account some other moving pieces with the contract. So I don't want to add too many confusion there. Our budget document actually states that the FY21 budget includes a 2.25% increase, 2.25% increase, as you noted, Counselor, that while we were attempting to negotiate a one-year bridge contract, because as everyone remembers, we cut almost $1 million out of the budget last spring. This was talked about during the Finance Committee meetings in the spring about how we weren't sure where the contract was going to land. We didn't want to make further cuts at that point necessarily. If we didn't have to, if we were going to be able to get folks at the table to agree to a bridge year contract that would be consistent with the previous contract. I think I even have memos to this regard somewhere that I could find.
On page
I don't
190
think it's a,
of the budget document.
yeah, it's in the budget doc. It mentions that we are still negotiating a new contract. I guess I'm just surprised. I don't think there should be, I don't want to step out of my lane, but I don't think it's productive to attempt to make it look like something wrong happened here, whether or not we're having a conversation now or whether or not we had a conversation last spring. If those negotiations had landed earlier than now, we would still be having the exact same conversation. The variance is the variance and we need to solve it. And so I just want folks to understand this, when the conversation is happening, it's going to be the same conversation. And so whether it was last spring, if the contract terms had been settled at that point, then we would be having a conversation about how to deal with the additional amount. Its contract was settled a few months ago, and we've been working in these meetings. We've had multiple conversations, and so I guess I'm just surprised to hear that there was confusion about the fact that there was a gap and that we were trying to talk about a trash fee.
Well,
my understanding
and
was,
I respect your comments. I think there has definitely been confusion as to the amount of the deficit. And I think I'm still waiting to see a signed copy of the contract. And I just am surprised to see when you have a budgeted item, I don't even think it's proper to have if this was well known in the fall, to have a known deficit of $400,000 on a line item. It should have been remedied with a transfer from capital stabilization at some point.
well,
If this was known, if this was known early fall, right after July, we should have remedied it right away.
Counselor, I agree with you. Ideally, we would have done a transfer earlier in the fall. However, we are dealing with so much right now in the town side. We've been, as I noted, we have made deep cuts in our budget. My staff is completely cut. I've been understaffed for 2 years. The amount of work that we are working on right now, I don't know how to explain to folks, and I'm embarrassed that I'm doing this with other people on the call, but I'm disappointed this is the tenor of the conversation right now, because we were in meetings all fall with all of you. Maybe there's misunderstanding on my part. Austin, I defer to you on this. I thought it was going to be a collective effort that we can't set a fee. The town manager cannot set a fee. The council sets a fee. We thought we were having an active, engaged dialogue with folks during the fall on this, and so unfortunately, it looks like there's clearly been a miscommunication. And I apologize if I'm out of line in any way, but
No, you're not out of line. You absolutely have the right to state your opinions. And again, my tenor of this was to just state what I thought were the facts, what I still think are the facts, and just to get to a point where I agree with the CFO that we are where we are, and the conversation is either now or it could have been last fall. I understand we went through a pandemic and we're still not in the middle of it, but we're still in a pandemic, but we still have to take care of the business of the town, and we are where we are. So
yes,
right now we are facing a deficit of roughly $420,000. That we have been.
It's more than that, Counselor. It's more than that. So the reason we didn't put a motion forward yet was because, like I said, I've been working to try to figure out with the town manager. This is based on tonnage, so that is a variable amount of money. So we can either set a fee based on what is in the terms of that contract. We can look at updated tonnage. I'm also trying to figure out, we can use CARES Act if there's tonnage above and beyond the amount of money that is in that was quoted for historical tonnage in that letter. So we've been trying to figure out, can we land on a number where I can capture some of that tonnage on CARES Act to mitigate the impact of the community? They've been through a lot. We don't want to put them through any additional cost that we don't have to do that. So we're trying to figure out, we have options under our contract to do 3-year, 5-year. That changes the financing for the barrels. We wanted to have that conversation through this process so that we could figure out what that number is. The number is multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars. We have a motion teed up for next, it will come out on the agenda tonight for the council meeting on Tuesday to do a transfer where we picked a point in time. We picked a point and assumed a 5-year contract if we can get the council to approve that. And we assume tonnage levels based on what was in the proposal from the vendor, and we will work to transfer that. That does not negate the conversation about the usage fee. We need an appropriation because we cannot spend in excess of the appropriation. And so we've been trying to land on that. And the only reason why we haven't done it sooner, not because I'm overwhelmed and busy, but because there are many moving pieces and we thought we were having the conversation through these meetings. I just want to be on the record on that.
Okay, so what is the number?
So the number I have that will be in the motion, that's based off of so just so folks on the call know, the base fee for FY21 is $886,704. The disposal for the tonnage projected based on what our previous usage has been is $811,000. Sorry, I'm tired. I've been talking all day. It's $811,760. If we finance bins over 5 years, if the council would agree to do a 5-year contract, it's $72,000 a year for the bins, for financing the bins. The total there is $1,770,464. The variance with the FY21 budget is $506,163. So the motion that has been drafted for council is 506,163 to transfer.
And the motion is to transfer from capital stabilization.
Oh, apologies. General stabilization, Counselor. It's not a capital. It's the vendor's capital waste, but the capital stabilization would be for a one-time capital investment. This is for an ongoing operational cost. It's of services provided to the community for waste removal.
So I always thought that ongoing costs could not be taken out of like a stabilization or a fund. It had to be.
You're
Absolutely
yeah,
right.
You're
An
exactly
ideal
right.
situation.
So this can't be, this is, how do we want to say this? We have to have a physical appropriation so that we can actually continue paying the cost for the rest of the year. The only place in which we have the amount of money to actually fund an appropriation, you can't appropriate without an identified funding source, is that rainy day fund. So that is just that basically just gives us the authorization to keep continuing to pay capital waste. It cannot be the solution for the go forward technically for this year or go forward after that. So we need to identify a different financing source to actually pay for the contract. That transfer just allows us to actually have the appropriation to keep paying for the rest of the year, basically.
Okay. And because we're so in dire straits, moving forward, FY22, FY23, finding that money to come out of our existing budget is going to be extremely difficult and have for the potential to cut places that are already lean, that are already running lean, and that we certainly don't want to make cuts to.
Yeah, just to give folks a sense, $500,000, I mean, that's our library budget is just a bit over $500,000. I mean, that's multiple departments' budgets. That is a huge amount of money on the town side and on the school side as well. Frankly, it's positions. I don't know where else that money could come from if it was you to take the money from somewhere else in the budget. So that's probably 8 to 10 jobs. If you would do an average salary of $50,000 per person, that's 8 to 10 jobs. So I don't know. I mean, if you had to cut public safety, that work doesn't go away. So you have to pick up that cost in overtime. I don't think anyone is interested in cutting teachers, particularly in the middle of a pandemic. Our public works officials are keeping things safe, the work that they do is critical. And so otherwise you're talking about eliminating multiple departments at that point, which means that directly impacts services to the community.
So I just want to reiterate for the people watching, because I think that's a sticking point, is that we cannot keep, pulling money out of our funds to take care of this difference. The only way we can do it is either budget for it or charge a fee. And right now it's, charging a fee is an option. Budgeting for it is another option, but finding that money in an extremely lean budget where we don't want to cut people's jobs, we don't want to cut public safety or schools or anybody else, because we've made it was so lean, the budget last year. We were meeting as a finance commission and the finance committee, and we were thinking, where are we going to get the money? And the school wanted much more than we could give them, and there's only you can't get blood out of a stone, unfortunately, and we don't have a large amount of money coming in. We're not increasing our revenue by any means in this town, especially in the pandemic. But even before that, it's not like we have a lot of new development in town. We don't have a large business. So I think that's important for everybody watching, the constituents watching, to understand that we're between a rock and a hard place right now.
Thank you, Counselor. I appreciate you saying that. Can I just give, sorry, Counselor, the chair, I just wanted to give folks listening just a really quick comparison point to hammer home what Counselor Honan just said. So I'm expecting somewhere between like 1.1 million to maybe 1.3 million in revenue next year. That is if we don't get any assistance from the federal government through the current package that's pending in Congress. So if we only bring in 1.1 million to 1.3 million in new money, and we know the school probably needs around $1 million, they typically need at least $1 million a year. Our health insurance costs up a couple $100,000 a year. You have contracts for your public safety officials. You have like that, and then you're gonna, if you add $500,000 on top of that, separate from that $500,000, it is Austin and I are going through a brutal exercise right now of trying to just balance without that, because the math already doesn't work. And so when we say budget, I just want folks to understand that budget, that's money that's also coming from the community. It doesn't come from somewhere else. That's money from the tax base. So it's just part of sharing that general fund pie. And it just, when you have to pay for something else like this, it needs to crowd out something else in that general fund pie, unless you have a user fee associated with it.
Okay, so just, and Rich, I'm sure you have a few questions too, but, and just to reiterate the fact that I think everybody knew that the contract was up. I don't think, well, I certainly didn't, and I don't think many people would have assumed that we were going to have a 40% increase in the cost of the contract over a yearly basis. So I just want to put that out there also, that we went from, it looks like now, last week we were talking about 420 to 30,000. Now we're talking about 506,000. So Rich, did you have a comment?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was hoping that we would find a solution, and I know you were working on it last time, Anna. And I know there's only so much money to go around, and to even imagine to budget it in next year's budget. If there's no money there, you can't budget it. So I think, now we have to start thinking about alternatives. And I know a fee was one, possible, maybe an override. And I don't know if there's an appetite in the community for that, but we're kind of stuck, like Tracy said, a rock and a hard place. You don't want to lay off teachers, you don't want to lay off fire, you don't want to lay off DPW workers or any public safety officers. And I know we're at bare bones at the town hall, as you just alluded to, Anna. So it's tough decisions, and it's got to be thought of and weighed the impacts. So I think we have to start having those serious conversations right now, that what we intend to do. It's got to get paid for one way or another.
Okay.
One other question I had: if we do take this kind of money out of our general stabilization, that does have an effect on our bond rating, correct?
Well, it potentially has an effect on our bond rating. We were talking about taking 750,000 out of the stabilization last year, and we ended up, and we were told that they didn't think it would have a negative impact, but they couldn't guarantee us that. And we ended up being fortunate enough to get more money from the state, and we didn't have to put it in. So, you never want to ideally take out money especially for an ongoing expense, because it just goes against all general accounting principles and thoughts. So I don't think Anna would want to do it. I don't think Austin would want to do it, given the ideal situation. I don't think anybody, I think we could all agree that nobody wants to take it out of stabilization. However, I think we could also agree that we can't have a deficit, a known deficit being unfunded, and you can't continue to pay money.
We have to pay the bill.
If you don't have the money.
Right.
Yeah. So, Anna?
Oh, I was just going to note for Councilor Farino. So 1,000%, Councilor Lettieri is totally, absolutely correct on this. And I don't think the specific transfer would be substantial enough. Like if we said, we're going to transfer $2 million, if we completely sort of disrupted our rainy day fund, I think folks are also being somewhat mindful of that a lot of communities are using their rainy day fund right now. The state is using a substantial amount of their rainy day fund right now just to get through. So it's raining. This cost was added on in the middle of it, a downpour, a hurricane, even, it's as bad as it can get. So I don't think it would totally disrupt our bond rating in any way at this time. If it's 2 years from now and we're still pulling from the rainy day fund, then yes, I honestly think that we would have a problem. And just really quickly, what I really wanted to say was that basically the value of what's coming out is, I think it's about $50,000 more than what the council is voting to put in on Tuesday night, because we were able to close the year last year with free cash. So we had a small surplus we were still able to maintain because we restricted spending so much, and because we budget our revenues conservatively. We still had just a little bit of extra revenue come in at the end of the year, despite it falling off a cliff in the fourth quarter. So because we had a little bit of tiny budget surplus last year, that money goes into the rainy day fund. It's basically going to go in if the council then votes to take it out. So it's sort of paying. It's not like the balance there won't be sort of precipitously low or anything like that.
It's a wash almost, yeah.
Mostly.
So just to give a few extra facts, tidbits, just to let everybody know, this new contract, part of this new contract, and I think the CFO referenced the new barrels that are coming soon. Part of this new contract is the town is going to be securing roughly 6,500 new totes. These totes will be the identical size and color of the existing recycle bins. The difference will be the color of the top will be a different color. So these will be distributed, my understanding is sometime early spring, to each house. Each residence, if it's a 2-family house, you would get 2. A 1-family residence, you would have 1 tote. That is what you will be allowed to put out on a weekly basis. You will have your 1 tote, equivalent again in size and shape to the existing recycle bin, along with obviously your recycle bin. So that is what you would be allowed to put out in trash. I don't have 100% clarification on if you had an extra bag on the side, if they're picking it up or not. But I think the premise of the contract is that you have 1 tote per residence. So just for clarification on that. Just now, if we, before I do want to take questions. There's over 50 people out there now, but I do want to, just for sake of discussion, we have multiple items to discuss on a fee, not a fee. I think Councilor Honan said it really right, where there's really 2 options. You could try to suck this up in the budget somehow, some way, which is going to be extremely difficult, or you can have some sort of fee. Now, you can have a fee for the whole trash. You can have a fee on 50% of the trash. You could have a fee on what the new overage is in the trash from the new contract. So, there's different things that the council could decide upon. Just to throw some numbers out there so people understand what we're talking about. A fee, any type of potential fee, would be strictly a user fee. So people who are getting the service would be responsible for the fee. So there are roughly 4,400 residences in town that are available for trash pickup. For example, if you took the $1.7 million figure, roughly $1.7 million, divided it by 4,400, that's, if we were to say, if everybody was to agree that, this should be a user fee based program, it would roughly be, a little under $400 a year. If you were to say, the new contract is roughly $500,000 more than the old contract, that fee to pay for that would be potentially around $115, $120 per unit. So if you had a single family house, you would get, and I'm not sure how, but you would get a $115 bill, either it's two $60 bills, $115, whatever it happens to be, on a yearly basis. So that would be a potential thought. The other thought is, when would you start such a fee if it was going to be implemented? Would you have a fee coming out in the spring for fiscal 21? Or would you say, well, let's try to start this in fiscal 22, which would be sometime after July 1st? Now, if we did not have the ability to make a one-time transfer from stabilization, obviously it would be a lot more dire situation that we would really potentially be looking at imposing a fee for fiscal 21. Now, potentially, if the council wanted to try to impose a fee for fiscal 21, theoretically, it would create a surplus in the trash account. Now, theoretically, again, if we were to come in, if we had a $500,000 surplus, theoretically, if that passed through come next October, November, when we're looked at and we ended up with that amount in free cash, we could then divert it back to stabilization. However, there's no guarantee of that. We don't know how the budgets are going to come in. We know revenues are off, but we've, management's done a good job in trying to keep expenses down in a lot of areas. But we don't know what snow and ice is going to be. We don't, there are some unknown expenses out there. We're hoping now is the time that, excise taxes have been extremely low, but now is the time of year when those bills will be coming in. So over the next probably 3 to 4 weeks, we'll have a much better idea of where we are in. When the town gets its revenues, the majority of the revenues come from the town, come from real estate taxes. And then we get state aid. And then the variable that is really there is local receipts. And that is your excise tax, your sales tax, your meals tax, your room rentals for hotels and bed and breakfasts and such, fees and ticketing and all that stuff. So that's the stuff that's kind of the variable. And that's where the discrepancy has mainly been in terms of receipts. And they don't come in on a monthly basis like excise tax. And so this is the time of year where we will see the excise tax revenue coming in. So we'll have a much better idea of where we are in terms of, in terms of the budget. So I would like to hear from, if my committee members are okay with it, I would like to hear from some of the people. Now we have, now that I look at it, there are 10 questions online. So, and I don't, if others choose to, that's fine, but I am only going to read questions that have a name attached to them. And the first question I have here, the first question was anonymous, so I don't really want to. I have a question from Shannon Poolhouse, and the question, these are all anonymous attendees. I'm not sure if that's because, can they choose to be anonymous, or is that?
Answering the Q&A. I've been typing in answers in the Q&A.
Yeah, we can do attendees with the hands up if you want to do that.
Yes, can we do that, Denise?
Sure, no problem. All right. Okay, let's see. We have, who's the first one? Okay, we have Zoom user, but I don't have your name. Could you please give me a name?
Name and precinct, please.
Hi, this is Kathleen Capuccio, Waldemar Ave. Thank you for having this discussion, Jim. I think it's really great. I do have a couple of, questions, comments. I know it's not, question and answer period. Is there actually a contract signed by Capital Waste and the town, or is there a proposal that was just provided by Capital Waste to the town and not signed? Also, if this, again, let's just assume it's a contract, was signed in July, I guess July 1, 2020, I'm confused as to how the town could enter into a contract knowing that the budget did not have the money. And at that point, we thought it was around 400,000. Now it's 500,000. I don't understand how the town could enter into a contract full well knowing that we did not have the money to do so. So those are just my two quick ones. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, one more thing. And Mr. Farino had mentioned, I think, what's the appetite of the town with regard to a 2.5 override. I can tell you by a lot of the people I talk to, there is zero appetite for it. And I also get very concerned of potential fees to circumvent actually going to the citizens for 2.5 override. I think we have to be very, very careful about how we do fees. And again, trying to go around a 2.5. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Okay. We have Steve Mcshinsky.
Hi, Precinct 5, Steve Mcshinsky. I was a past finance committee for 17 years. I'm on some committees in town now. Actually, the woman in front of us, the Proposition 2.5 was one of the questions I had because fees are a way of getting around that. And then the question is, if we're already paying for this in part of our taxes, are we going to have a tax reduction and then pay for the amount of the fees? It's just a question. And then what about people that have existing bins? I have a number of bins that they're actually used on the trucks. They're used automatically. So then I guess I'll throw them away and put them in the trash. And then the final question, I think, well, two questions. One is, we're talking about trash or we're talking about recycling? Trash, I understand, and recycling, we already have the blue bin. So if it's only the trash, that's one thing. And then the other thing is auditing and monitoring of the trash. I mean, I'm old, I'm on, Social Security, but I'm walking to try to stay alive. And I look at the trash and I see everything outside and around the bins. You can't tell me that there isn't somewhere, someplace, somebody could just start putting some little tickets out to say, hey, you can't put that much trash out or something like that. So those are the questions I have. I am really worried about increasing things because of my limited resources. And we have to make a budget work. Have we hired people? I'm on a commission where we never hired a person that we should have had, and we're losing revenue because of that. So that's my question, is how many people will be hired, all the stuff that you normally do on the advisory board. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, we have,
Is anybody going to answer any of these questions? Bob?
I'm writing down some answers I'm trying to get through as many questions, but I will look. One thing Steve mentioned, the trash versus recycling bin, and Tracy can talk about the recycling piece later, but and maybe even Anna could talk about the cost, but the cost differential, you will be able to put out one recycling bin, you will be able to put out one trash bin. The cost of recycling has gone up dramatically, where in years past, it used to be a really good savings. It's still morally the right thing to do, but the savings per tonnage is not substantial. But I think, we'll have Tracy talk later, and the Zero Waste Committee have other ideas that we can reduce both, which will lead to, just better lives in the future for all of us and our children, and just, again, morally the right thing to do. But you will be able to have one recycle bin and one trash bin per week.
okay,
Denise?
Mike DiLuso.
Hi, Mike DeLuiso, Precinct 5. Jim, I think I mentioned a couple of these questions during Councilor DeMarco's town hall meeting the other night. There's the situation where, like I said, I'm in a household with 3 adults and 2 children. We recycle everything we can. Today was my trash pickup day. I put out my full recycling bin, a full 64-gallon tote, the same size as my recycling bin, and I still had some additional trash I had to go to another barrel and a box full of empty cardboard boxes next to it because they didn't fit in my recycling bin. What's going to happen to those of us who simply, no matter how hard we try, cannot get all of our trash into one bin in 1 week? And I'd also like to ask, since there seems to be so much passion behind this for the community and so many questions and so much information and misinformation going around, if you see it in social media, would the council, I know there's some urgency to this, but would the council be willing to hold a full public hearing on this rather than trying to squeeze it in an hour or so on a Thursday night, just so that the information can get out there to the people? Everybody can be making informed decisions and informed questions. The public and the council all have the same information, and the questions can be even submitted in advance so that we can try to get a handle on this and get all the information out so a real true decision can be made. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Very good points all around. I do agree that we should have a public hearing on this, but Denise, next question.
Okay, we have John Stanley.
Hi, John.
Hi. I have comments and questions. I'll stick with my questions now, if that's how you'd like to proceed. I don't want to take much time. Okay, can someone define to me what is unit-based pricing? That's in the presentation. It says unit-based pricing programs are an excellent way, blah, 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 blah. What is unit-based pricing?
So that means you assign a value to the disposal of trash. So per unit, it would be per residence. You could do per bag. You can do per bin. There's all different per units, but
okay,
it's assigning a value to trash disposal.
Okay, thank you. That leads me to my next question. I own a 3-family house. I live in it. I have 3 apartments, including my own. We put out 1 barrel of trash a week, which is half the size of the current recyclable bins. We put out a recyclable bin every 2 weeks. We're very conscious of this. Since I will get, because I have 3 apartments, I will get 3 more bins. Am I going to pay more for bins that I don't use? Because we will continue to only use what, in fact, the new bin will be so large that we won't even half fill it. So
For people who don't want to use bins, we will figure out ways to offer.
I'm sorry, Austin, but I didn't say I didn't want to use a bin.
No. If you did, what I'm saying is the additional bins.
Yeah.
If you can fit it into 1 65-gallon bin, and you don't want the other 2 for the other 2 units, we would gladly take those back. And I think that would be a case that we'd be offering an abatement, because again, it's a reduction in waste. You are reducing how much available waste we're putting into the stream.
Right.
So more than happy.
We've been doing that actually for years, without any prompting by any committees. I still want to be really clear on this. So I turn back the other 2 bins. I'm only paying for the 1 rubbish bin.
Yes.
And somehow you mentioned the word abatement. So that's going to get taken off my bill.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So just to clarify John's question there, and if Austin can verify an answer. So if John owns a 3-family house, and if there was $100 fee, let's say, normally he would get a bill for $300. You're saying now if he chooses to take 1 bin, he will only get a bill for $100.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, Jim, for clarifying.
Thank you, John.
This is the presentation.
And that's a suggestion. I'm not putting words in Austin's mouth. That's exactly.
Okay.
Could I just add something, just some clarity to that, just to make sure that when eventually this is or potentially rolled out, if it's an abatement process, just to be very literal, the bill might be $300, but that'd be a process to have it taken off. So just so that folks, if you are thinking of an approach similar to what John is saying, just so that if this is rolled out, there wouldn't be any confusion. There would just be a process to take the other $200 off.
If you went, but that's why I just wanted to clarify if it was an abatement that you'd have to file for, like a tax abatement, or if you only had 1 bin, you would only get a fee for $100.
There's going to be right sizing with the program, with the initial deployment. There are going to be places where we don't give enough bins, and there's going to be places where we give too many bins. So it's going to be a little bit of right sizing, but for anyone who is looking to reduce, we would offer an abatement program. And again, the presentation that I made that is posted on Facebook and
I have it in front of me, Austin. That's where I'm taking my notes from.
Yeah. So in that presentation,
I don't use Facebook, by the way. I only use the town website.
Hey, I don't use Facebook either. So
yeah, well, that's why I'm attending this meeting, because I don't want to be getting any information from Facebook.
You and me both, John.
Great.
So in that, basically overall though, the reduction in waste, however much we can get out of trash cans and out of those trash trucks, is going to be the way that we reduce the amount of this contract in the long term. Any steps that we can take to move in that direction are going to behoove the town, because it will reduce the amount of tonnage, and because we are now responsible for the disposal fees associated with the disposal of our waste. The most expensive thing that we can do is put things in the trash. So anything else that we were doing to reduce that amount that we put into the trash reduces the amount that we are paying.
As I say, in my property, we have been doing that for many, many years. It's remarkable how little trash we put out, because we do recycle naturally. We didn't have to read it or be told about it. Okay, I want to move on to just a couple of more questions, because I don't want to take up an undue amount of time.
Thank you, John.
Oh, this is maybe this is a question. I think this is really important, as I think all my questions are. How many times a year will ratepayers, that's me, all taxpayers, get updates on how much the town is saving by people increasing their recycles and using this program? And I don't want it something that I'm going to get June 30th at the end of the budget year. This is what I want. I want it to be a minimum of at least once a month. And I don't care how busy people are. I want it once a month, an update to all the people who are paying for this, how much are we saving or how much are we losing? So we're not caught short-footed like this again. I know you guys doing a lot of work, but we do a lot of work too. And we do our budgets, and we have to do our budgets ahead also. So we need information, and to get tons of information thrown to us on June 15th is not acceptable. So what's the plan?
I will say, John, to that, and I'll let Anna answer this too, but we get billed on a monthly basis, and I think we're like a month behind on when we get billed. So when the bill comes in, and let's say it's $17,000 for the month of January, they will then tell us, I assume, they will tell us what the tonnage is and the breakdown of that fee. Is that correct, Anna?
Yeah, the bills right now give us the breakdown, and I actually, Director Steve Callis, I think, is on. He and I actually had a conversation today about, I was inquiring with him about getting potentially like some recent monthly tonnage reports for the past couple of months, because we have some data prior to that. So I think that we can even, I'm wondering, maybe Director Callis and I could figure out a way to set up some sort of monthly dashboard. I think that there might be a way for us to get potentially a dashboard up on the website that could be updated very easily. So happy to figure out a way to get folks updated.
Okay, thank you. And Jim, this is absolutely my last
That's
question.
okay, John.
I have seen, and I have observed, and I know what I'm seeing. People who are redoing parts of their houses or whatever, put out tremendous amounts of construction material, use carpeting, put it out. I've seen this, so I know what I saw. Then I see a cell phone picked up, phone call is made. 5 minutes later, the trash people come down the street, and all that stuff is taken without any conversation. What sort of monitoring is put on the vendor to monitor their own staff? Because I have seen this happen. And if I've seen it happen, and there's 6,000 residences in this town, I can't be the only one. You know, I think we need to know that the haulers are monitoring themselves. And I know for a fact that they're not.
Thank you, John. That's a good comment.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jim, for the time. I have other things, but they can wait to another meeting.
All right, John. Denise?
Okay, Mark Aubuchon?
Hi, Mark.
Hey guys, how you doing? I appreciate you taking the time. Truly, it's a thankless job that you're all doing. So I had really just a couple points I wanted to try to touch upon. One is the bin part, and I saw a bunch of comments saying much the same, that people are providing their own, receptacles as it is. I myself actually have a 64-gallon bin that I bought myself, so I kind of feel it's kind of redundant to have to get one from a town. And I don't know what the cost is involved with that versus the savings of that. I do question a little bit, although I do understand that there's a need of fair, equitable, disbursement of this across the population that uses it as far as curbside usage. But case in point, the gentleman was just speaking, I think he said he had a household of 5 or 6. I have a 2-family, and we have 2 and 2. Not every household has the same amount of population, and per person, trash usage tends to be how it accumulates, I would say. And I don't know if that's something that can be looked at. And that's why I tried to break it down in a question that Austin was answering offline was, actually doing it per person, per unit, as opposed to just per unit. A little bit more fair, less questionable. I'll just say it that way. And then finally, obviously the tonnage. And I had a conversation with Mr. Farino yesterday. He was kind enough to call me, and we spoke a little bit. And tonnage seems to be the big factor here, just the cost of the weight of getting rid of crap, for lack of a better way to say it, and the fact that we are no longer shipping it out or selling it. So there's no subsidy involved with the recycling, which many people have made the point about. They see that their recycling, after they separate it out, just gets tossed in the trash. Is there a way to work on programs that way? Not necessarily separating. I mean, that can be done, but I mean, I know that some towns like Natick, Wayland, people actually bring their Amazon boxes to a way station and fill up a dumpster, and then that dumpster's hauled away. I don't know if that's savings to the town or just, the way they choose to do it. But I mean, is there a process like that that we can look at that's sort of easy to put into play and hopefully help us offset these costs? Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I will say on the bins, just to answer one of those questions, and one of the things you were talking about on basically on usage, and different households would have different usage, which almost gets into a, pay as you throw system, which is a whole nother, instead of a fee based, it's more of a usage base. You're going to pay for exactly what you throw away, which is, I think a more lengthier process, a harder process to implement, but could be a more equitable process in the end. And the cost of the barrels, just for everybody's sake, is, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Anna or Austin, I think it's $60 a barrel that the town's paying roughly, and we're getting, 6,500 barrels, whatever that is. I think that, obviously there's a uniformity in the barrels, but the other thing is it's much easier for the workers to empty the trash with the capabilities of the trucks now, and it just saves them on a lot of insurance claims and as far as workers go with back injuries and such. So I think I don't think the bin itself means anything other than the size. The uniformity is good for the town. It looks a little better, I guess. And it's more for the way it's accessible with the piece of equipment. Denise?
Yeah, I have, I'm not sure if it's a Miss or Mr. Paulsonelli. Give your name and precinct, please.
Hi, Doreen Paulsonelli, Precinct 5.
Thank you.
So
Hi, Doreen.
is capital waste our only option for a trash contract, or I haven't heard any talk of any other company?
I'll let Austin answer this in a minute, but I think, there are most things that are bid out in the municipal process has to go through a process, and there's 3 or more bids that come in or needs to come in. There are certain vendors, and trash being one, I believe, that doesn't need that. But I do think, and the town manager could talk about this a little bit more if he wants, but I do think he definitely did reach out to other vendors. Sometimes there's a vendor that's just too big, and Winthrop's just too small an area to come to. There is a big advantage to having a vendor that knows, especially in a town the size of Winthrop, with the narrowness of the streets and such, and the amount of small little streets that we have. There is a big advantage to having a good knowledge of the town. But I do think that Austin did reach out to other vendors. Austin, if you wanted to say anything on that.
Did reach out to other solid waste haulers. In addition, we do not bid out a solid waste contract. Not something that's required under master law.
We can't hear you, I don't think.
Yeah, Austin, we couldn't hear you.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, better.
Sorry about that. So I did talk to other vendors, that's correct. And we also are not required to bid out solid waste contracts under Mass General Law. Municipalities, there are certain contracts that you don't have to bid out, and solid waste is one of them. Trash companies are interested when it comes to contracts and things like that.
Denise?
Sorry. Okay, we have Kurt Malott.
Kurt, how you doing?
Hi, you able to hear me?
Yes.
It's been a little while since I've chimed in on things. But I just want to quickly just say that, I work in my company. We actually have a single stream waste, and we have gone years trying to figure out this whole recycling thing, and it's pretty streamlined now. But luckily, I work with people who live everywhere across Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Connecticut. And so I've been asking them about this, how their town does it, and what their biggest issues are with it. So one is, yeah, they're paying for it. So they're frustrated over that. They said their biggest concern, anywhere that there's a pay or a limit on how much you can put out, is the illegal dumping. So they said, you see parts of town that never had trash, were so clean, all of a sudden there's just trash everywhere. People just dumping stuff because they can't put it out. So I think that's a concern that that I do have, in addition to, yes, fees or increasing the citizens of the town having to pay for something else on top of everything we already are. But I'm concerned about illegal dumping, which I know that hasn't really been a topic really brought up. That's about it.
Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you. Okay, we have a C. Toby. Can I get your full name, please, and precinct?
Hello?
You're on mute. C. Toby. There you go. Okay. All right. Okay, we will go on to Peter Gill.
Mr. Gill, how are you?
Doing all right. How's everybody tonight?
Very good, thank you.
Been sitting here trying to figure out how to get unmuted. I finally figured it out. I feel that that a trash fee is probably something we need to do. I think it's a fairness of spreading of the service. It's sort of a pay as you go, and I think that some way it needs to be done, that those of us who want to use it, and those of us who don't want to use it, we all need our trash picked up, I guess I'm saying, a long way. I like what John Stanley said about the way he squeezes his trash so they only have one barrel for a three-family house. We only put out our trash every 2 weeks, but I know that that's not probably something that can be dealt with. But I think the pay as you go, the user fee, and I would love to see it somehow set up as an enterprise fund like we do with other stuff that the town provides. I don't really think it's fair now to add this onto the real estate taxes and have people paying for an inordinate amount through the real estate taxes. And I know this isn't just a way to squeeze in a Proposition 2.5 override. It's a definite relationship to how much you're using to how much you pay. So I'm a strong proponent of some sort of a trash fee system. And I know there's all different kinds throughout the Commonwealth. And I know 2 of my kids live in Milton and they're very happy paying a trash fee. And the trash system is run very well. If you put out an extra bag you can buy a sticker for extra bags. If you put out an extra bag without a sticker, it doesn't get picked up. It's that simple. And as John said, there may be some enforcement stuff that needs to be done. But not to be repetitive, I think an enterprise fund user type fee is very fair, and I would be very in favor of it. Thank you very much. Thanks for all you're doing. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Peter. And just before we go to the next question, I'll just give out a quick fact that, the town, the state does work on solid waste and how the communities deal with it. And they break it into regions. We're in what is considered NE2. There are 39 communities in our region. And those communities basically go as far north as like Gloucester, and we're basically the southernmost communities. And they include Melrose, Malden, Wakefield, all those type of communities. And there are 39 of them. And out of those 39, 16 do their solid waste out of a tax-based program, so basically out of the taxes. 9 of them have a flat fee where they're charging a fee for it. 12 of them have a pay-as-you-throw, and 2 of them have actually washed their hands of the whole thing. And that's another question, but just wanted to let people know that there are definitely in our area a variety of implementations that communities have been doing in terms of solid waste removal. Denise?
You're on mute,
Denise, you're muted.
We have C. Toby. Are you with us? Okay, I think we have lost C. Toby. Okay. All right. And we also want everyone to know we do have Q&As that have been being answered, so we should be good with those. And as it stands now, we have no other questions. Callers, does anyone have any other questions? Please raise your hand. I think we're good. We have no other hand raising.
Okay, we'll have
Oh,
some
wait a minute.
discussion.
Nope.
You go,
I'm
Wendy
sorry.
Page.
Wendy Page, come in. There you
Couldn't
go,
resist,
Wendy.
Wendy.
I'm in. Hi. Good evening, Wendy Millar Page, Precinct 2. This is going to be totally on the opposite end of all of this. So for me, they lovingly call me Recycling Wendy in this house. And they laugh because they say, is it actually being recycled? You're wasting your time, etc. For me, I think we need to look at somehow teaching about trash in addition to this. There's a link that we were looking at the other night where it's like a recycling quiz that you can go and you can find out, did you know that you can recycle your pizza boxes as long as there's no food waste inside? They are recyclable. Can you do aluminum cans? Can things with labels, plastic bags? So I think we need to do a better job to help the town as the impact of all of our waste, whether it's recycled, food waste, or just regular tonnage of disposal, on ways that we can all help each other reduce that waste. I'm also all for, I know we already have, you can bring your batteries and paint cans and things down twice a year to the fort for recycling per cost. But I think we need to do a little bit better job of determining how we waste and what we waste. And that might also help people have a better understanding of how to get it down to, I know my household will knock it down to 165. There's no way. I have 5 grown adults. It's going to be impossible to get it down to that 1 trash barrel a week. And then it's a 2-family. So therefore, the other family downstairs, do we say to them, oh, sorry, we need to put some trash in it just because we have the house because you didn't fill it. So there's going to be some things that we really need to get on multiple levels here. And the other thing was, people that have reached out to me have said, I can't afford this. So if I'm only one person in my household and you guys have 5, I'm paying the same as you to get rid of my trash if it's a flat fee. So there was an equity question there. And then the other thing with the question that was posed to me, which I found was really interesting in terms of our veterans, public, and the housings that we have. Who pays for that? Are those, how would that be added into the budget in terms of the housing facilities that we have, those kinds of things? Would that be an expectation that those folks would have to then start doing some kind of pay as well? Or is that going to increase the housing budgets that we need to look at somehow to make it equitable? So that's just a few things. I've got a list, but that's all for tonight.
Thank you, Wendy.
Okay, we have Shannon Poulos.
Hey, Shannon.
Hey there, this is a quick one because I know I've already asked the question, but I just wanted to drill down on it a little bit more. So in terms of the knowing we had a contract, knowing it was going to expire, knowing we didn't have it actually finally negotiated at the time, but knowing that for a year or at least a year or 2, we knew that it would be a material increase. I had asked why wasn't a material increase budgeted into the 21 budget? And the answer was, we budgeted 2.25 increase to cover the base cost of the previous contract. And then it said we weren't able to allocate additional funding to cover the disposal fees, tipping fees. I just wanted to just drill down on that. Is that like a statutory thing where the we can't or we didn't? Is that a statutory limitation? Because again, even if we didn't actually know the precise number, wouldn't we have, at least maybe talk to some folks to say we think that it's going to be closer to the 38% increase that it actually was, and would have budgeted, perhaps something more than the 2.5. But again, maybe it's just not me understanding if there is a technical statutory limitation or reason why we couldn't budget more in there. Thanks.
Anna, can you take it?
Yeah, happy to. So at the time when we were working on the budget last spring, we did not know that there would be a material increase. I was not aware that there would be a material increase. So when we had our conversations in our finance committee meetings all last spring, the discussion there was that, we were trying to negotiate with, looking around at options, negotiating with capital waste and seeing what we could do. we budgeted the 2.25%, which would have been reflective of a 1-year extension under our previous contract with them, which is what we were pushing for. We were in the middle of COVID then, as we are now. We were hoping to try to push it off for a year if we could, and try to have this conversation later. My understanding was that, unfortunately, that conversation, I defer to the town manager on this, but that conversation went as far as he was able to get it. It sounded like we weren't going to be able to land such an arrangement with any provider. And so after the budget was done, that we had written terms presented to us about where we would need to, what that would need to look like. And the budget can pay, so the base cost is actually well below where our budget number is for the current year. It's just that the total value of that new component, the tonnage-based component of the contract, gets us well above where we were. So that piece that varies by how much folks throw away is what pushed us up and over and beyond. So there's nothing in statute or anything like that. What is in statute is that we do need an appropriation to keep paying. We can't spend in excess of appropriation, and so we must have an appropriation, or else we can't continue to pay to have the trash removed. So that is why we have to go to council to request the motion from the stabilization fund so that we can actually have a full appropriation. And so that's why this more was not set aside in the budget last year. We were, as I mentioned, we were cutting out over $1 million in the budget last spring. We already thought we were going to have to take $750,000 out of the rainy day fund until we actually got better news from the state. Actually, after that also happened after the budget was done. And so the council actually had to revote a rainy day fund transfer earlier in the fall. And so bottom line, we did not know, I did not know on my end when we were budgeting that we would be seeing an increase of this magnitude. We were really trying to get a 1-year bridge contract, which was the whole conversation with Finance Committee all last spring, was we were trying to get that 1-year bridge contract. So we didn't have to deal with a different type of increase yet.
Denise,
Okay,
any other?
That's not what has been said in the past in Austin's presentations. I mean, it was referenced that it had been known that we were getting a pretty good deal for a while. Now, again, what is that between 2.5% and 38? I don't know. He didn't give out a number, but I think it would be a little bit misleading to say to folks that we thought that we didn't have any idea that it was going to be something north of 2.5%. But again, I know this isn't a back and forth, so I just wanted to just make it clear.
Yeah, no, I just to make sure that I stated that in a clarified manner, because what we were at the table, we budgeted for what we were at the table at. Like, we budgeted for what we were asking for. And so because we were making so many drastic cuts already, it was hard to say, should we cut, just what number should we pull out of the sky to sort of cut additionally, assuming the Capital Waste would not have agreed to do a bridge year contract with us. So because we were really trying to get a bridge year contract, knowing that when the contract was eventually, if we couldn't do that, that eventually we would have to take additional steps, we sort of did the best we could to hedge against what might be on the table for those new terms. And Austin, if you please clarify and correct me if I'm incorrect on any of that.
You are not wrong on what you just presented.
Yeah.
Shannon, anything else right now?
No, thanks, Jim.
Okay. Denise, any? Sure, Anna.
Oh, apologies. I just wanted to mention just so that so if we had been successful in negotiating a 1-year bridge contract, we would still be sitting here having this conversation about very similar terms likely going into next year. To be honest, we're probably, I don't know, tonnage has probably gone up this year with folks at home. So it's probably better that the terms we have are based on previous tonnage. And it's great that we have CARES Act money that I believe we can use for tonnage that's above and beyond what our average tonnage has been, so we can mitigate an increase, because a lot of other communities that have been on these types of contracts for a while, they've got folks at home, and I think that they're having budget issues because they don't have sufficient resources to pay their trash contracts either. And so we're lucky that we have some additional potentially federal funds to mitigate the above and beyond piece above that sort of average amount.
Thanks, Anna. So I think it's important, and people have mentioned it and talked about it, Wendy, Mr. Stanley, Peter Gill. I think we're realizing that we need some sort of fee program, whether it's pay as you throw or a flat fee. I think a pay as you throw fee makes more sense. It's a little bit more equitable. You pay for what you throw out, not for what you don't. And maybe you don't pay what your neighbor does if they throw out 5 times more trash than you. And I think that that sort of program would also encourage people to reduce their waste. Reducing waste is not easy. I know that, it's like some people, they don't know how to recycle. They don't know what they can recycle. They don't know how to reduce their waste, and part of that, I think the town can help with recycling events for things like textiles. When you want to get rid of a comforter, you want to get rid of your old pillows, that takes up a lot of trash space. But if we could help with textile recycle events to get rid of all your old, your spring and fall cleanouts that we all like to do, ways to reduce trash, ways to reduce your waste, your household waste. There's, a composting service in town that you can get that also costs money, but I use it myself. It takes a lot of waste out of your trash. We've been talking about pay as you throw in this town since Emil Demento brought it up more than a decade ago. I'd be willing to say that it was probably more like 15 years ago that Emil Demento was talking about pay as you throw. So this is not something new. A fee, for our trash is not something that's just come up. As Austin mentioned, those numbers, 43% of Massachusetts communities use a pay as you throw. So we're not the only ones that are trying to deal with this trash problem. The recyclable issue, we used to get paid for our recyclables. We don't anymore. Now we pay to recycle our trash. We pay less for recyclables than we do for trash, but we still pay for recyclables. But it's still important to recycle, not only for the morality part of it, but also because it costs less than throwing away your trash. I've heard a lot of people in town don't think we even recycle. Winthrop recycles, period. I've talked to Capital Waste myself at an MMA conference. I know there's some anecdotal stories about us not recycling. We do recycle in this town. It's important to recycle as much as you can. This is not an easy thing. It's hard and nobody wants to deal with it. And maybe that's why we've been putting it off for so long, because who wants to think about their trash? Who wants to think about a fee, especially in this pandemic time? It's a shitty time for it to be happening, but it's happening and we have to deal with it. I think we need to stop talking about, what went wrong and figure out, of course, we want to know what went wrong and how we can prevent it from happening again. But I think we need to all realize trash is big business. It's big money. And we need to get ourselves out of that cycle. We are running lean. We're running beyond lean in this town. We do not have money in this town, and the pandemic made it even worse. If we can get some CARES Act money for the excess and trash, awesome. But we shouldn't feel that we can just rely on that or rely on next year's budget, because as we know, and Jim and Austin, we've been trying to tell you guys, the budget is stretched, and it's not looking like we're going to cover level fund what we did last year. So let's think outside the box. Let's realize, put our big girl pants on and realize that we have to do something else other than what we've already done. I think pay as you throw versus a flat fee would probably behoove all of us. Sorry.
Rich, did you have anything? Rich, you're muted.
Sorry, I apologize. Just a couple of quick comments. And I realize, as Tracy said, we are in a real bad situation. And it's, would have thought almost a year and a half ago, or we thought we were in great financial shape and things were looking up, and we had plenty of things going on and it was looking great. And then it just hit the fan. I think we should definitely revisit pay as you throw, pay as you go. I'm sorry. And the reason I'm thinking that is it would address some of those issues where you only have 1 or 2 people in a household, and it would be advantageous to do that. I think if we bail this situation out this year, hopefully we could maybe get that situation going in the short term. I'm still not sure if we had signed a contract for 3 years. If that's we have to go through that 3-year process.
Stop it.
Or,
Stop it.
My dog's not acting up
Are
tonight.
you talking to Matt, Tracy, or what are you who are you talking to?
Yeah.
Sorry,
So,
my dog had something in his mouth. Sorry.
Realistically, Austin, I guess this should go to you, or maybe Tracy. How quick could you get a pay-as-you-go program to online?
So two things with the contract. I sent over to Denise the initial off agreement that we had with Capital. Again, you know, sorry, too far away from the mic again, I realize. I sent over to Denise an initial proposal that they had sent over that we went over right at the end of June last year. What we have, because we have to vote on this, or you all in the council have to vote on this regardless, concerning a 5-year contract, we have provided updated language for that Capital has signed off on. I haven't signed off on it yet concerning a 5-year contract that has the terms of the barrels over the 5 years and things like that. So we have that in hand. If you all to vote that way in front when the trash fee or the appropriation from the stabilization fund comes up on this next meeting on Tuesday with the town council in terms of the contract. So
So I just didn't catch
Rich, I think you were asking though about a pay-as-you-throw program and how.
In terms of a pay-as-you-throw program, which was the second part of it, pay-as-you-throw would just be, we'd roll out the same bins. We would like unified bins in town because part of the ease of the program is having the same bins for every truck to pick up. We also want the same bins so that we can replace and repair both recycling and trash bins into the bins. What we would have to do in that case is we would have to deploy a bag program across town with local vendors and most likely have to sell bags at potentially town hall and DPW as well. And locations around town that would be Winthrop official bags. Those would be the only bags that we put trash in, or every bag would have to have a Winthrop branded sticker on it. So we could deploy a pay-as-you-throw system very quickly because it's just the procurement of bags to deploy to local vendors to be able to sell on our behalf. Those bags would be at a per bag cost that would be this is the cost of disposing one 15, 20 gallon bag of solid waste. So the bag could conceivably be $4 per bag or something like that. It's gonna cover the cost of that bag. I don't have that calculation right in front of me. We would just have to back into what that would be if we wanted to wipe our hands clean of everything associated with trash and have everything allocated onto a trash fee as a pay-as-you-throw fee, if that's the way we wanted to do it.
Would that actually alleviate, because that would not alleviate the recycle bins, correct? And that's still a charge from Capital. That would not alleviate the cost of trash. That would alleviate the cost of solid waste removal, correct? I mean, not alleviate the cost, but it would.
So it would, if there's a couple different amounts that we're looking at here. There's the base amount of the contract.
Correct.
And there's the tipping fees associated with disposal of solid waste and recycling.
Right.
So if you were to do pay-as-you-throw, instead of just covering the difference of what we had budgeted versus what we're gonna owe, you'd want to be covering the entire amount of the trash and most likely recycling in the contract, because that's the only way that you're getting the money from it. You'd have to figure out how much, if you wanted to still have the tax base subsidizing a program as well. So that is why I was proposing the flat fee structure to begin with, because it's the first fee that we've ever had associated with trash. It's the first time that we'll have universal bins, the first time that we'll have a cap on what households can deal with, it's a lot of changes just with those. If then we go the additional step of every single bag you put out has to be a Winthrop bag or has to have a sticker from Winthrop, and we're starting on like that per unit cost to introduce that with no understanding or any value on our what we put in the trash to begin with, I don't want this to fail. That's all I'm looking for. I'm looking for a program that can potentially work. And I think because it's a new fee, not doing pay as you throw to begin. Pay as you throw is a big jump. Not that I don't think the town could do pay as you throw or the usefulness of pay as you throw or how that does lead to the most equity in the waste stream through pay as you throw. That is a dramatic, drastic change from what you have now with loosely enforced 3 bins per unit of housing that generally all gets picked up, whether it's in a bin or on the sidewalk. So to go from there to universal bins with universal bags or stickers and people really seeing the cost of their trash every single time they have to buy those bags at the grocery store, or not being able to put things in the trash if they don't have the official bags type of thing, because you're not supposed to double bag things, it becomes a harder program to install and to be successful with. So it's not to say it's not without its merits. It's something, and we could do it. It's something that's just a little bit more difficult to get rolling in a community that hasn't taken some of the other incremental steps on the way there.
Thank you.
Okay. So things that we're in a situation now where for fiscal 21, and I hate to say we're covered, but more than likely there is going to be a motion that comes before us to transfer money from stabilization, which is going to cure the deficit, half-heartedly, whatever, but it's going to cure the deficit for fiscal 21. So if the council or the subcommittee so chooses to make decisions, if you were to make a decision that is going to have an impact on fiscal 21, if the council had the inclination to impose a fee for this current fiscal year, this would have to be decided pretty quickly, because you would have to have the time to get bills out in a timely manner to see that come in. Personally, I do not think that this is something it's not something that should be rushed into. We're where we are. We don't want to rehash how we got here, whatever. We're where we are now. So I think that's the first question, and this could be a recommendation from the subcommittee to go back to the council or not, but we need to decide whatever we do, if we want to try to enact a pay as you throw, which I think, if you're going to do some sort of system, that to me is the most equitable. To me, it's also the hardest to enforce. If you're going to have a concealed 64-gallon barrel with multiple bags in it, in these bags, it's not that the person that's dumping the worker is going to be physically taking the bags out and throwing them in. It's going to go on a lever, it's going to go up and into the bin. How are they going to know if the 3 bags at the bottom of the barrel are Winthrop certified bags or not? I don't know how that works. I just think pay as you throw is much more equitable to me, but it's much harder to enforce and much harder to bring out. And I don't want to get into a point where we're overcharging people, because I don't know about that. As far as fiscal 21 goes, the one thing I think we can agree on is that, or one of the things I think we can agree on is that we haven't been made aware, for whatever, for a multitude of reasons, there's a lot going on, of all the specifics of this contract in a manner that could have started July 1st. And most of that because we probably didn't know July 1st. But to look at the tonnage, like, people have no idea that they're supposed to be bringing 1 64-gallon barrel out. So they're not mindful of the tonnage right now, yet we're potentially getting charged for over tonnage. I do think, and Anna mentioned it earlier, I do feel we have a very logical argument for any over tonnage charges this year in terms of CARES Act money, because there are many more people at home, much more people working from home, kids are working remotely from home. It's just bringing much more trash in and so forth and so on. I think any overage in tonnage could potentially be paid out of CARES Act money. And I would ask Anna to look into that, which I'm sure she is. So it's, you know, in just the fact that there was zero education understanding of that starting July 1st, we were under a new trash contract with different parameters and different requirements for each individual household. Somebody brought up in a question earlier about housing and how that would affect it and other trash we picked up. And to follow up with that, I think that's a really good question. And I think I would also like to know in terms of town trash, schools, library, DPW building, town hall, is all that trash just included in this contract as a whole? Do they pick up also the town trash for people to understand how that works with towns and schools? Anna.
Apologies, I don't think I have that information. Austin, do you have that information?
I would actually defer to Steve Calla.
Yeah, Steve.
Contract is for residential pickup.
Yeah.
Curbside residential pickup is what this is concerned with.
Steve, are you on?
Is on. 1 second.
He might not be available, but if he's not available, if Anna could maybe just look into that a little bit and just to see how that works, to, you know, just for clarification, how the municipal trash is picked up and where that cost is associated with in terms of, you know, parks and schools and public buildings, if we could find out that information. And also in terms of housing and how that works also, you know, that would be.
I'm sure Steve has it off the top of his head. He must just be tied up.
That's fine. That's fine. Totally understandable. So again, getting back to the point that we have to come, if we have to come to a relatively timely decision, if we are looking at trying to supplement this year fiscal 21's trash line item. So that's something that we need to discuss. Then we need to look at fiscal 22. I know Anna and Austin are working on the budget as we speak. They have a number it's got to be around 1.6 or 1.7 million that's going to be in trash that they're going to have to account for in some way, shape, or form. So that's inevitable. That we know all now. We all now know well before fiscal 22 that is a cost that's going to be associated. And like Anna said, so that is just to give people an idea. And Anna did say this earlier, but you know, we have roughly a $500,000 increase over last year in trash. We are roughly probably going to have somewhere between a $350,000 and $450,000 increase in medical. We are going to probably have, even on a level service budget, we are going to have roughly $1 million to $1.2 million increase requested by the schools. So we're approaching over $2 million in increases without, you know, really looking into anything else. And in a normal year, we're going to have anywhere between $1 million and 1.3 in new money coming into the town. So that's showing a deficit of roughly $700,000, which, you know, we have roughly a $55-60 million budget, which is a heck of a lot of money to all of us. But it's not you know, to try to take 700,000 out of that. And just for people to understand, on municipal budgets, Anna, if you could help me with the exact numbers, but payrolls in municipal budgets are basically 75 to 80% of the budget. Is that somewhat accurate?
Yeah, like easily 80%. So
there's
when you have budget cuts, it's personnel. You have to start laying people off.
Yeah, because there's not a lot. You can't, you know, shut the lights off. You can't shut the heat off. You could be better with it, but you can't. There's not a lot of variable expenses you have other, you know, and then you hit labor. And we are not, I don't think anybody, another thing we could all agree on is we are not overstaffed in probably any way, shape, or form.
I would just note, like, the town's budget right now is balanced on not backfilling positions, like in certain positions. Like we are not close to fully staffed. And so a lot of ways that we're able to get the budget in balance is to just like, we will not backfill that position until later in the year. So if the town was actually staffed up with the amount of staff that it used to have on a couple of years ago, our budget gap, like we would not be in balance right now. So it's just so that folks understand, like we've been doing creative solutions here to get the budget in balance. And so if we're just gonna, so the town's budget is just not, it's not a sustainable path, and this does not help the conversation if a fee is not implemented. It will be honestly devastating for the town's budget to have to absorb a $500,000 cut on top of all the cuts that we're already doing.
And we do have, and I don't mean to disrespect in any way, shape, or form, Council President Boncory has been here and has been here for 90% of the meeting, and I do want to give him some time if you want it, if you have any comment on
No,
this.
I was here for all of the meeting, all of the public comment, and I went over to the Miller Field Committee meeting. They just supposed you were there to being there. That started, I went over about 6:15 and then said, I'll come back over here. It's been very interesting, whatever the committee comes up with. This is going to be on the agenda Tuesday, and we'll be rehashing it again. That's really all I have to say about it.
Okay. And, you know, and again, not to be the bearer of bad news or anything, but just to state facts, there are, you know, relatively few options we have. And one is to do nothing, which Anna discussed. Oh, Tracy, you are so lucky to have a husband like that. But one item is to not do anything and to just try to, you know, make ends meet within the budget, which is extremely difficult, would be devastating, like Anna said, in a lot of ways. But that is an option. The other option is to try to implement a fee that is going to pay for all the trash. And doing something like that, you're looking at somewhere around mid $300 a year per residence. Secondly, would be to impose some sort of fee short of that to somehow supplement the budget in some way, shape, or form. The number that's mostly being thrown out there or talked about is roughly $125 a year. You know, could be $100, could be $130 a year. That would bring in somewhere around that $450,000 to $500,000, which would basically alleviate the increase in the contract. You know, and again, for clarity in all this, the other option is to, and these are all things that can be done by the council, basically everything I've mentioned. The last thing that can't be done by the council, which would be requested by the town, would be some sort of override, and it would probably entail a menu type option, which would have trash and such on there. And then that would strictly be voted on by the residents, and it would be either be up or down. You know, for example, go back, and I don't know what it is now, roughly probably 10 years ago, there was a menu type item and it listed specific items, and there were such things as the library and the senior center and fire and police and schools, and everybody had a specific request. And you know, and again, I'm just trying to be transparent and say these are the options that we really have, including any of those 4 options I mentioned. So, and the first thing, again, to go back to rehash again, the first thing is we need to come to some sort of solution, either tonight, or I could post another meeting before the next council meeting, I think, of stating whether we have any desire or inclination to look at a fee for fiscal 21. So I'd like to get comments from Councilor Honan and Councilor Farino on that. Either one, Councilor Honan?
Yeah, it's tough.
And I don't want to put you first. I don't want to put you on the spot, but
It's okay.
we all have to talk about it.
Yep. I think because a lot of people are hearing about this fee for the first time, and they're freaking out, and it's a shocker for people. And I think we need time to educate the public about recycling, about our options, to get you know, some sort of educational program going. I would suggest, just as a suggestion, that we use the sorry about the buzzing, the stabilization fund to pay the difference this year, and talk about a fee to offset the difference next year. And, you know, I know the pay-as-you-throw program, you know, could take some time, should take some education. I think education is a huge part of this. And I think implementing anything without getting more information out there, we're just going to have a huge backlash. And so that's my suggestion. What do you think?
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Anna, I'm sorry.
I just want to put a consideration on the Finance Committee's radar. So when we are working on the town manager's budget, which is going to be presented based almost 1 month from today, we need to reflect the new appropriation for next year. So when we do that, we have to have a funding source demonstrated in his budget for that. And so if we don't know what that is, I don't know how to put that budget together because it's a very different exercise if we're now going back to departments and saying, we need, on top of all the cuts I'm bothering you all about, we now need to find another $500,000 worth of cuts. It's a completely different conversation, and it could make for a very complicated budget process with the Finance Committee if, you know, if at some point later this spring, if there's the conversation on the fee lands and we basically need to rebuild the entire, we're going to be doing again for the second year in a row, rebuilding the entire budget again. So the only option that I would then have would be reflect another transfer out of our rainy day fund, which makes me highly concerned to show because I don't actually see how we close our initial budget gap for next year as where I stand right now without an initial transfer from our rainy day fund. So now we're getting into a situation where we are destabilizing the town's finances. And so I just want folks to understand that we can show that in his budget with the idea, hopefully, that there is a conversation this spring that will land before the end of the year so that we can make that's just a one thing to change in the budget so that we don't have to go through and, you know, make $500,000 worth of additional line item cuts. So interested for any perspective folks might have on that so that Austin and I can take under advisement as we are spending the next few weeks trying to close the gap we still have on our end.
No, I think, and I don't mean to say that we are going to postpone the fiscal 22 discussion for a month or 2 months or 3 months. I understand that, you know, the town manager has to formally present a budget to the council by May 1st. And he will informally present a budget to the council sometime around the end of March. And we understand that. I'm you know, going one step at a time. And the most timely issue right now is to see what we're going to do for fiscal 21. We do understand that you're going to need a funding source in some way, shape, or form, some sort of concrete. You know, we can't just say we think we might do something and you can't put that down in the budget. There has to be some concrete answers. And I think you will definitely have those in a timely manner. But I think right now, I just want to get off the table or keep it on any discussion of a fee or a bill that might be going out to residents within 3 weeks or 4 weeks. So I just want to take that first, but I absolutely understand your thoughts, Anna, that we can't forget that this is not, we can't wait until July 1st because that's the beginning of the fiscal year. We understand that. Council President.
Yeah, this is on the agenda for Tuesday night as new business. So it's going to be coming back to your committee anyway for a further discussion on this and probably for further education of the public. And then probably have a vote at our next meeting in March or the first meeting in April at the latest as to what exactly we're going to do for this year and for the future. So hopefully that comes out of your committee with a recommendation for 21 and a recommendation for the future fees of this trash compact.
I agree with that. I think if we wanted to make a decision Tuesday night on fiscal 21, if there was no exception from the council, we could potentially do that. And I would like to start the discussion on Tuesday night so it wouldn't be the first time before us again on fiscal 22 at the following meeting. So thank you and point well taken.
Yeah, and I would like to do that because I've gotten numbers that I just can't keep them straight in my head. And I haven't had a piece of paper in front of me since the only thing that I've had on this is the contract that, or the potential contract that we had. So I don't have any of the numbers in front of me. I've heard $125 a quarter to now I'm hearing $25 a quarter. So I guess I've had wrong information. And I knew that if it was $125 a quarter, it was going to be a lot of money. $25 a quarter, you know, I wouldn't have a problem maybe making that pitch tonight. But I think I want to have some concrete numbers. It was $440,000 last time we met. Now it's 600,000. So I think, we should have a little bit more, put in our, so we can digest a little bit, maybe before the meeting, so that we can have the debate with the council.
Okay, so just for a clarification on a couple of those points, I think you were right, it was around 440, it's now like 506. So it hasn't gone to 600,000 yet, it's 506. And on the quarterly thing, we didn't really discuss if the fee would be, and we haven't even gotten to that point on how the fee would be set out. But what we were saying, if there was going to be, in this conversation, if there was going to be a fee for fiscal 21, it would be in one bill and it would be coming out probably April 1st or May 1st, whatever it is. If there is a potential fee, in the fee that we've been discussing for the most part, we did make discussion about, just to let people know that if the council so choose to request a fee to pay in full for the trash line, it would roughly be $350 odd a year for each ratepayer to pay. Now that could be, $350 a year, it could be $82.50 a quarter, it could be $175 semi-annual, or it could be $350 annual. We haven't talked about that right now. And the other number we've really been talking about is the 125-ish, which would basically cover the cost of the increase in the contract. So we would still budget as a town, if that's the way we chose, we would still budget roughly 1.2 or 1.25 or 7 million in the budget. And then we would supplement that with a fee-based supplement of roughly $450,000 to $500,000. So, but now for this quick discussion we're having, or relatively quick, and Tracy had said she feels that, we definitely need to look at fiscal 22 in a timely manner. We're just trying to see if we could come to a recommendation now on fiscal 21. Do we have a desire to, nobody wants to, do we have an inclination to send out a bill that will supplement the fiscal 21 trash contract? And in some ways, the logic behind that, I guess, would be that at the end of the year, we would more than likely end up with a larger free cash component, which we could then put back into stabilization. So that would be the desire to do a immediate fee for fiscal 21 would be more likely to supplement, to refurbish or re-strengthen the stabilization that we're taking, within the next couple of weeks. Because we have to have an appropriate, we can't have a line item that isn't.
Well, I understand that.
But that is cured now. The line item for fiscal 21 is going to be cured, not in the manner that Austin or Anna or I or you guys want, right, from stabilization, but it is going to be cured. So I think the first thing we need to do is decide, are we stopping discussion on fiscal 21 and really focusing on, over a short period of time, coming up with a proposal to the council for fiscal 22 and beyond? So I guess, Councilor Farino, do you have a desire to?
Right, I still want to stand by that statement to go in front of the council. But Anna, you said that we used the money from last year, the leftover, and that basically offsets whatever kind of almost the portion of money that would be taken out for this, correct?
Yeah, I think we're moving it to 447,000, and we would
right,
need to
and then we're
out
going to get some money back from CARES, hopefully.
Well, that's TBD. It requires a really extensive analysis, and we need to make sure that we have sufficient money under CARES and all the other things that we're drawing down on CARES for right now. But I'm going through that exercise right now, basically.
Yeah. And it would still be the $25 a month, based on, if we wanted to do something, it would be $25 a month. So roughly people would be
quarter. Yeah, not month.
Not a month.
No, we're not looking for
a quarter.
No.
So, but we only have 3 months left. So, how many months left in the budget? Till June. So we got about 3 months. So it's, $25 that they're going to be hit up, or 50.
No. I think this fiscal year, I think what, the town manager and the CFO are looking for is an inclination from us. Are we going to impose a fee for fiscal 21 in any way, shape, or form? It could be $20, it could be $100, it could be $400. Do we have a desire to supplement the trash budget this year, the current year that we end? Do we have a desire to do that? Tracy has said.
And just to clarify, because it's March, some communities have quarterly fees. Some communities, I think, have a fee, just a one-time payment. And so it remains to be seen what, on a go-forward basis, would be appropriate for Winthrop. But because of where we are, we only have 1 quarter left on which we would have an opportunity to put something out in a bill. So even if the goal was to eventually have it be $25 a quarter, because only 1 quarter, if we still wanted to cover the gap, it would, for the first year, it would just be a one-time fee, and then going forward, it could either be a one-time fee again, or it could be a quarterly
So
thing.
you'd be looking to bill out $100 basically in that bill, one-time fee, and then it would be $25 a quarter next year.
So I think Austin, was it like was it 130 that you did based on if it was a 5-year contract and we find in the barrels of finance?
$32.
132.
For this first year, it would be $132.08. That would cover that delta.
So, and I think it's really important to just reiterate one more time. So the contract that we have now, moving beyond just this year too, there's the base component of the fee that will go up 2.5% every year for the next 5 years if the council agrees to do a 5-year contract. The piece of this that varies on tonnage, if people keep throwing, if that part, if folks are throwing away less, that could help mitigate that 2.5% increase potentially on the base fee part. And so it remains to be seen if, depending on what we set based on the current gap, if that gap grows in the future because folks don't throw away less, then we have to make sure that we're mindful of that. But we're talking about the gap that we have in front of us right now based on the current year contract and sort of the immediate sort of year or two type gap that we're looking at here. But again, that could be reduced in the future if folks throw away less.
Okay. And again, just to reiterate, if that number is, I really don't want to talk about the size of the number right now. I really want to get to a conclusion as to whether we have a desire to impose a fee for fiscal 21. I do not. Tracy does not. Rich, do you have a desire to do that?
I'm really not too keen on it. I'd like to hear what my peers say on the council, but
it's going to go back to the council regardless.
Yeah. So I would not recommend a fee for this year.
Okay. Tracy, do you have a motion for that?
Motion for
Okay, so there's a motion for Tracy that we do not supplement the trash contract for fiscal year 21. And there's a second. Is there a second from Rich? Second. All right. All those, any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote. Rich?
Yes.
And Tracy?
Yes.
And I would be yes. So that's unanimous not to have a recommendation. The council could decide and will decide on its own, on its own merits. But our recommendation is that we do not supplement fiscal 21's trash budget. Now, the consequence of that would be we will probably end up transferring money from stabilization, which will deplenish stabilization account, and that's something we'll have to deal with as we go forward. Now, the discussion, and it doesn't have to be right now, but it's going to be soon, and I think we need more public input, is what we need to come to some sort of resolution and to give the CFO and the town manager adequate time to try to come to a balanced budget and how they're going to do that in fiscal 22. Anna, did you have something to say?
No, I just really want to be on the record with folks that if there is no fee put in place this year and the town uses $500,000 of its rainy day fund, it is highly unlikely that we close this fiscal year. Separate from that, I just want folks to know it's highly unlikely that we close this fiscal year with much free cash at all. So what that means is that money coming out for this year is unlikely to be replenished anytime soon. And if we receive some additional federal aid that is flexible from the latest package that's pending in Congress, that makes sort of going forward a little better. But I just want to be let folks know that if that aid doesn't materialize, or if our revenues don't rebound for a few years, we will not be able, and we have to rely on additional transfers just to fund our existing our teachers, our police, our firemen, our library. Then we are putting the town's finances in a more of a precarious position, and at that point, we could have an issue with our bond rating. So I understand all of that is a lot, but I just want folks to know that it's not that next year we won't necessarily have to look at the rainy day fund again, because we are still, our revenues don't look good this year. I know we hopefully will open up and have some recovery, but as we've talked about in Finance Committee, and I hope folks that are on tonight, please come to Finance Committee meetings. The more people that are looped in on this, the better. And so we don't know yet what our recovery is going to look like, how quickly those revenues are going to rebound, how the DOR that manages and allows us to set our tax rate in our budget, we have to get it approved by them as well, if they will let us show large increases in revenues next year. And so things are going to be very tight. And I just want to be on record with folks understanding that if there's no fee put in place this year, and I empathize and completely understand that people are dealing with horrible burdens right now. Obviously, we don't want to be in front of you asking for a fee. That's the reason why last year that's why when we came into this year, we tried to get a 1-year bridge a bridge contract, so that we weren't in front of folks in the middle of COVID having this conversation. Unfortunately, we're still here. We're here having the conversation anyways, which is really unfortunate, and we get it. Completely understand. I just wanted to be very clear so that I could let everyone know that if that money is not backstopped by a fee, and if we have to go there just to keep our core staff on board next year, if we don't get additional aid, then you are starting to look at, depleting your resources for your one-time funds. And we need to make sure then that to the extent we start seeing a recovery, it can pick up enough to dig us out of that hole. And I don't know that it can. So I just want to be very much on record on that.
Thank you. So now we want to discuss, and again, this will go back to council with a recommendation. Council could potentially take this up Tuesday if no councilor objects to it. If not, it would be the following meeting. And the council president, if needed, we can always have a special meeting if time is of the essence. And we don't want to shortchange in any way, shape, or form, or try to delay or put off any discussion about fiscal 22 and how we are going to go about recommending something for that. And I think, and again, we're talking about roughly 4,500 homes. So when we talk about a figure, if that figure is $100, that's 440,000 roughly. If everybody pays, that's everybody in that 4,400 homes. Now, that in and of itself doesn't even cover the overage. If we're looking for roughly 500 and change now, that $100 fee wouldn't cover the overage. So I think, we have to begin a discussion as to, and nobody wants to talk about this again, but we have to begin a discussion as to how we choose to go into fiscal 22. I think, an option is not to do anything. I think Ann has made her point abundantly clear that as much of it in Austin and all of us, really, I'm not putting this on Anna, but that as much as it is an option, probably isn't an option. There needs to be something done. Now, the options are we come up with a pay-as-you-throw system in a quick and timely manner that we can institute without any pains and heartaches and everything else. We come up with some sort of fee-based program where we are going to have some sort of flat fee that is going to subsidize the overall trash budget in some way, shape, or form. So either we are going to try to subsidize 25% of it, 50% of it, 75% of it, or all of it, or any percentage we choose, but basically something like that. And those figures would be something like $125, $250, $300, $385, whatever that happens to be. And then we have to discuss how we would want to distribute them. Would we want to just have them sent out with a water bill on a quarterly basis? Those are all things that we would have to talk about. Or do we even want to have a discussion about and possibly discuss the fact that, the town doesn't necessarily have a spending problem, it has a revenue problem. And then you go into the whole discussion about, do we bring to the table for the voters to decide this and take it out of the hands of the council and let the voters decide what they want to do with their money, and to have a discussion on some type of menu style override. And that would involve more information and input from Austin and Anna on the overall budget and different departments and requests and needs. And that's something that needs to be discussed. Everything we discuss isn't something we want to discuss, but needs to be brought to the table or we wouldn't be doing our jobs. So those are the things we have to talk about in a timely manner. We can't just say, hey, okay, in the next couple of months, we'll start bringing it up. We honestly need, I know Anna and Austin would like answers now because they're in the middle of trying to prepare the budget now. The budget, again, will be somehow informally presented to us probably the end of March, and will formally be presented to us the beginning of May, and will be voted on us probably the second week in June. So I would like for our committee to have some sort of substantive things to bring back to the council no later than the second meeting in March. So I'm sorry. Yeah, the first meeting in April, which is already behind where, I'm sure Anna would like us to be, because they'll already have some sort of preliminary budget proposals coming. But we need to act on this, and we could always have special meetings. I don't care if we meet twice a week, it doesn't matter to me. But I think we need to have some timely meetings scheduled at least every week over the next 3 weeks, and have something to come back. We need to come back to the council with a recommendation probably by the second meeting in March, so we can discuss it and vote on it either then or the first meeting in April. So those are the options. That's what's on the table. I just have to put everything out there. That's our obligation. That's our duty. And then we have to decide what we want to do. I know we've taken in an awful lot now. We've been meeting for 2 hours. We did come to some sort of agreement on fiscal 21, which is timely and needed to be done. I would actually like to, if time permits, or if we don't mind, either go around the table again or ask for a second round of public comment, which if there are a few questions from, are there any questions out there now? I will ask for public comment, brief as possible, for people who didn't have a chance to discuss something in the first round. Denise, is there anybody out there with their hand up?
I see Karen Chavez.
Karen Chavez, yep.
Because she was at the Miller Field Committee
Been
meeting
waiting
as well.
patiently, Karen.
Thank you, Karen, for filling in at the Miller Field.
Oh, no problem. I'm just going to kind of repeat everything that you've already said. I have to agree. I don't think there should be a fee for this year. I think it's too soon, too quick. But I do agree with both the town manager and the CFO. You have to come up with a fee so that they can complete the budget for FY22. You can't go into the budget, as we all know, with a deficit. I don't care if the fee is $100 or if it's $25. Just get a number to them so that they can balance the budget. Lastly, I'm going to say now is the time for the Zero Waste Committee to fully organize and start to educate. Never mind just sitting there with their title. Get out there and start educating these people so that in the future, we're not going to have these large increases in our trash contract. Hopefully we can stabilize it and make it so that it's fair and equitable for everybody. This is terrible. As everybody knows, I'm a senior citizen. I live on a fixed income, but if I have to pay a trash fee, I'm going to pay a trash fee because I don't want to leave this town. And I would hope that other people would feel the same way.
Thank you, Karen, as always. Is there anyone else, Denise, that would like to make a comment?
I do have a Zoom. I'm not sure what your name is. Could you get your name and precinct, please?
Sorry, it's Kathleen Capuccio again. I cannot figure out how to put my name on the Zoom identification, so I really apologize. So Kathleen Capuccio, 49 Waldemar Ave in Winthrop. First, I really like to thank Jim Lettieri as chairman of this committee for entering into such a great discussion on such an important topic. I think it's just key. I love that Jim has allowed for some questions and answering to actually be done. It's really so refreshing. So I truly
You know
thank
who's
you, Jim, for
shaming
your
that
leadership.
at?
Denise, you got to mute. I'm sorry, Karen, you have to mute yourself.
Just muted him.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Kathleen, you're back.
No, I'm sorry. So again, Jim, I just thank you for your leadership on this issue. And something, that I'm finding a bit frustrating is Ms. Friedman had talked about, how we need to have pretty much, well, I don't want to, I'm going to paraphrase. The importance of having a fee to be able to rectify the deficiency that we didn't have that we don't in the budget to pay capital waste. In this town, we continue to be reactive and not proactive. A contract, we think, no one seems to have a copy of it, was signed, full well knowing that there was not the money in the budget to cover it. And then we hear comments about, let's not talk about the past and let's not talk about what went wrong. Historically, this continues for councils for at least the past 15 years I've been involved in. You know what? Enough of that. As private citizens, we have our jobs. We are accountable for what we do in our jobs. Do we all make mistakes? Yes. Is COVID horrific? Yes. But it's time to step up, take accountability. It's unacceptable for the town now to go back to the residents and ask for a fee for this fiscal year because frankly, something went wrong. Something wasn't discussed. So again, please, enough has been put on the townspeople. Accountability must start to happen in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Anybody else? Anna?
I just want to correct, I appreciate Ms. Capuccio's feedback, understand where she's coming from with that impression. I did not sign a contract. I have to sign off on contracts to ensure that there is funding associated with the contract. My name is not on a contract. I just want to be clear on that because I feel like there's an implication, like there's some sort of misappropriation of funds or something like this, and that I take very seriously. And so I want to be very clear that is not the case. And I want to be very clear again that in the spring, we were working to get a 1-year contract, and the goal of that was to not put a fee on folks in the middle of COVID and to have a very lengthy conversation with folks about this. We've been having these meetings since I think September talking about trash fees. It is unfortunate that this conversation did not reach a wider audience until now. And that I think is the unfortunate error that has occurred. But I want to be very clear with everybody that there is absolutely no misappropriation of funds or anything like that going on here. And I want to make sure that that is not the understanding. Thank you so much, Councilor.
Jim, Ms. Friedman, I apologize.
Kathleen,
Yes.
I know you made your comment and Anna just responded, but let's just try to go on with the rest of the comment.
No, I understand. I just didn't want her to think that I was inferring that she misappropriated funds or that she signed a contract. If that came across that way, Anna, I'm very sorry.
Thank you. I just want to make sure everyone was clear. I know this is a stressful issue, so I just want to make sure everything was clear.
Denise, anything else? Anybody else?
Yeah, we have Kirill Gusev.
Hello?
Kirill?
Yes. Hi, I'm sorry, I was on mute. I already asked this question in the text format, but basically I just want to come back and reiterate to the experience that Swampscott faced this similar situation, and what they did, they implemented smaller trash barrels, and absolutely obvious that people were absolutely furious, and mostly not because it's very difficult to use a smaller container suddenly, but the fact how it was implemented. So 2 points. First, if we're going to implement it, we probably have to have very significant advertisement company explaining why we need it. And so people feel good about this, not feel like horrified that they have to put trash in a smaller container and what they do with this overflow. And second, it's probably a good idea to do it because after the initial wave of complaints went down, it's clearly the town is in much better shape because you can see, first of all, the entire town has several same containers and everyone is like putting stuff in there and there is not much overflow. So people get used to it, like only less than half a year. And second, you clearly see that amount is reduced because people probably recycle more. Maybe someone look into composting. So that's my 2 points. I think fee is, I cannot comment on the fee situation because it is what it is now, but I think look into the smaller containers and implement it across the entire town and educate the town as a beach community that we have to be more cautious about what we do with our trash, recycle, compost. It's very important. Thank you.
Thank you. And we all agree, I think education is an extremely important component of all of this. Denise?
Okay, we have Mary. I don't know your last name. Could you get your last name and precinct, please?
Mary?
Mary?
She's muted. She has to unmute.
Yeah, I asked her to unmute. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
No, I think she's good.
You tell her how to do it?
Yep. I'm a muter on my end. Mary, can you hear us?
Can you hear me? I have 3 steps to doing that.
Yes.
We got you.
Hallelujah. Okay, Mary Mahoney, precinct 3.
Hi, Mary.
My question is, was mentioned earlier, the word anecdotal. I think it might have been Meredith, I'm not sure, but it concerned recycle versus what I guess you'd call solid trash waste, the two trucks, okay? We repeatedly, more and more, but it goes back a couple of years, do see, sometimes it's our whole street, I live on the Point, every barrel, recycle and trash, solid waste, going in one truck. I will tell you what that says to people is, and I'm not saying this is correct, I'm saying it's the train of thought that one follows is, we go ahead and separate, they throw it all in one truck, and as I understand tonight, the tonnage has a huge, large, somewhat portion on what we are charged as a town for our waste, correct?
Correct.
So we don't know why that's happening. We certainly don't run out and ask, but it happens a lot. It doesn't happen every week. It doesn't always happen in our neighborhood. Sometimes I've talked to people from the maze, it happened to them. A few years ago, people thought we were crazy, but after a while, people were like, you know, you're right. They just did the whole side. Now, with the mentality being in this town that we use less water and we pay more, and that's true, and I'm not going to get into why, but we know it's true. When people are trying to recycle and trying to see how not to get a fee, I would 100% agree. Don't put a fee on right now, because in all honesty, what I'm telling you is what we've witnessed. We're being told we owe more for a bigger contract for more waste, and we know we have separated and it has been thrown in the trash truck, not in the recycle truck. So it will not go over very well. The education is needed and all that, but it's not just to educate us. It's to educate those out there who are putting it all in one truck. I just don't understand that at all. The other thing that comes to mind is when we're talking trying to balance the budget and not have that position of affecting our bond rating and all that, has it been considered what some towns have done in tight times where if somebody retires, you don't rehire? Or has there been a hiring freeze? Because we know for a fact there hasn't been a hiring freeze. And so we're looking and going, okay, at what point do the taxpayers not take on the extra hires or the the expenses, I'm not saying they're not necessary. I'm saying you have to balance your budget. I can't go out and buy things I don't want and say, oh, my neighbor, hey, will you pay for that for me? Pay it off in installments, please. This is a problem. It's a problem because accountability seems to be missing. And that's my 2 points. But I especially want to know why we have one truck take everything and how we're supposed to deal with that. And we want to get the price down. Just as the man who talked right before me. Yeah, you have a smaller barrel and you recycle more. Not if they throw it all in one truck.
Thank you, Mary. And I know Austin has a comment on that. I know the recycle market has been abysmal and there's been a lot of changes in that. So I have two things I want. Austin, I know he had his hand up to just talk about that a little bit. And then if maybe Anna could find, while Austin's talking, to let people know that, you know, it's always good to recycle, but what the cost is to us for between the solid waste and the recycle per ton, to let them know that. But Austin, I know you had a comment to answer Mary.
So I can answer both of those actually. So in terms of the recycling, that is something that is not the case. We have the tipping fees for our solid waste and the tipping fee for our recycling. So we get tonnage reports of how much recycling is being dropped off at the recycling sorting facility. So we have discussed that many times with Capital Waste. As Councillor Honan discussed earlier on this call, she has brought up this matter with Capital Waste concerning the picking up of recycling and putting it in with solid waste and commingling materials and essentially contaminating that recycling. We are not doing that. Capital is not encouraged to do that. They've actually been brought into the DEP because of reports from the town of Winthrop and accusations from the town of Winthrop. So I have gone and met with DEP with Capital Waste concerning the recycling within the town of Winthrop. They are picking up recycling. They do have the receipts to confirm that they are picking up recycling, for one thing. Comparing the cost per ton of trash to recycling in the new contract, it is $115 per ton versus I believe it's approximately $112 per ton. So even though it's $3 per ton, that is $3 per ton in our favor. And then lastly, concerning the budget and filling of positions, there are a few positions that have been filled across the network of employees that were budgeted for. We have not been backfilling positions that were vacant for a period of time. We furloughed employees for a period of time, and we laid off certain employees as well. So we have been making tight considerations with our budget in how we have been dealing with our staffing to our detriment. We have not had a fully staffed finance department for the entire fiscal year, and the pressure that is put on that department is essentially untenable. I have had employees, I can't explain that publicly, what has happened, but take it from me. It is a very serious situation, and that is because we have not fully staffed that department. I also conceded in this budget my assistant town manager position and assigned it along with the CFO responsibilities to Ms. Friedman, who's on this call, and got rid of my number 2 position that had previously been budgeted for. That money was then allocated to the planner. So this idea that a planner or a planning position is going to solve a waste contract budget when it is one position that was budgeted for at the expense of senior management within the town organization is not correct. We have been doing all that we possibly can. We are not spending on office supplies or anything across our network. We have essentially frozen spending for more than half of a fiscal year because of the tenuous situation that we are in. We are literally only paying our employees at this point in time because that's all we can do. So again, we have been trying our best to make sure this budget is balanced. We are projecting to come in, unfortunately, not in balance at the end of this fiscal year because of all of the cuts that we have done and all of the sacrifices that we in the community have made over this year. We still haven't done enough. So I just want to be clear that the insinuations that we are not doing enough, we are literally cutting, when you're talking about how deep we can cut, we're cutting bone. We are cutting away the foundations of our organization to try to make sure that we come in with a balanced budget at the end of the year. Thank you.
Could I just add one thing to the town manager? If folks do see positions that are posted, many of those are also related to our fight against COVID-19, and those positions are not paid for by taxpayer dollars, like Winthrop dollars. Those are paid for by federal dollars. So we've been working to shore up infrastructure around our wonderful public health director, Meredith Hurley, particularly right now, helping folks sign up for vaccinations and all sorts of, helping with testing, anything like that. So if you see positions, they typically are labeled COVID-19 or CARES Act. Those positions, those are not, that's federal dollars. Those are not sort of local dollars that are directly funding anything there. So that's not hitting our bottom line at all.
Denise, anything else? Thank you,
No,
Mary.
Yeah, no, we're all set.
Okay, it's been 2.5 hours. I don't think anybody wants to rehash more, but this, we can't not discuss the urgency of this matter. So we have a council meeting next Tuesday. I am going to, and I don't want to get into the situation where I post a meeting at 6 o'clock and then we have a lot of comment, which we're going to have and deservedly so. And so I don't want to post a meeting for Tuesday before, but I will be posting a meeting for next week. I just have to look at the other meeting schedules and see, but I will have a meeting out tomorrow, a meeting date out tomorrow to discuss this further. And at this point, we are looking at, the 4 or 5 possibilities that we discussed about fiscal 22 and how we're going to go into the future. So we will be, again, rehashing, we will be discussing all the options on the table, one being to do nothing, which is an option, but probably not a worthy one. One being to discuss some sort of flat fee and what that might be, 25% of the contract, 50, 75, 100%, discussing possibility of pay as you throw and discussing having some sort of community discussion on the possibility instead of a fee of doing some sort of menu override option and to see if there's any viability in that option. So we will have all that on the agenda. That will be the only item I believe we have on the agenda. We might have a couple of things referred to us Tuesday night, which I'm assuming will be the appropriation from the stabilization to trash. So we will take that up at that meeting. But other than that, I don't see any other items that are going to require emergency action. So if anyone has anything else, anybody here on the panel, including the vice president, the president, sorry, Phil, the CFO or the town manager, please feel free to make a comment. If not, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Tracy, second by Rich. All those in favor? Rich?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
And I am aye. Thank you very much, all. I appreciate your time. Thank you, Council President. And have a great night. Thank you, CFO and town.
Thank you all. Be safe, please.
Thank you, Denise, for all you do.
Denise.